righty. What's up, Ringside Nation? The Ring Boys are back. -1 on the day for your post show. We got Arty and myself here to break down UFC Fight Night, UFC Apex 85, UFC Vegas 85, whatever the hell we're gonna call it going forward. Well, we got the results in, so we're here to break down everything, starting with your main event. We got Dolidze losing on a majority decision to Imavov, and Arty, you got this one right. I'll hand you the talking stick and give me your POV here.
Yeah, and I mentioned this to you earlier in the day. Obviously, they went to decision, but I think this fight could have been ended at the end of round one, and I don't think too many people would have been upset. I think Herb Dean let Dolidze try to recover, and I think that made this fight, in my opinion, kind of worse as time went on. You could definitely tell that Imavov was a little bit gassed after that because he was really trying to put him out of the fight. And Dolidze, as he got up after that, as the bell rang, he was wobbling everywhere. There was no reason for it to continue after that, in my opinion. But nonetheless, it was a good fight. It did stall out a few times. I know that they were in a clinch quite a lot, but yeah, I think Imavov just kind of ended the fight at the end of the first. We really didn't need to see the rest of it. It made no difference. And then obviously the controversial kick while Dolidze's hands were down on the mat. Obviously got a point taken away for Imavov, but that did not interfere with how this fight was going to turn out, in my opinion. Like I said, it was done after the first. On to you, man.
I was watching this fight with Doc the other night, and that kick that you just mentioned happened. And he was like, "That's it. We win. DQ. And I was like, it's giving me shades of like Anthony Smith versus John Jones again, where it's like, if you just stay down, you win. But like, you really don't want to do that. You're just going to hear about it from the MMA community, and it's not going to be good for your career. But yeah, no, I agree fully. Doc and I had Ramon. We were wrong. I'm shocked in the 47-47. Like, I don't know where that score came from or what judge that was. It's like 2024 has started off on the most strange like scoring cards, like for literally every fight. There's just like probably out of the, 35 fights we've had so far, probably 5% of them, I feel like 5 to 10% of them were accurately scored 100%. But anywho, no, I agree. I think Herb did a really good job to start. I wouldn't be mad if he ended it there. Roman got rocked early, obviously, and he just wasn't able to recover. Wasn't able to get back into the mix. We'll have to see what the rankings are now for the middleweight division. But I think if I'm Nasruddin, do I want to fight again quickly, or do I want to chill now and see if they give me an opponent and select pretty well? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he could honestly wait a little bit, especially with how much we have going on in the middleweight division over the next couple of months. There might be a big enough shakeup where Imavov could see himself fighting somebody that was coming out of the top 5 and maybe get a shot at one of those guys and kind of begin cementing himself in the division and in the top 5. So I think really the bigger question is, where does Dolidze go from here, right? Because this was a loss that I don't think he could afford, especially with his age. But like, obviously he's going to go back in the rankings and just not great for him overall, especially in the division. But yeah, I don't know. And as you're saying, the scorecards, I'm taking a look now because they're uploaded after every fight. It's Raw McCarthy had a 10-8 round 4 for Imavov. So that's how we ended up with a 47-47.
Wow.
The cards, like, I don't know. How can you have 3 judges that are so far apart? Are they watching something different? Like, does somebody have more knowledge than the other person? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. I think somebody brought it up previously as we had some decisions that came out that weren't super popular with the announcers. They said they should get retired fighters to begin judging. And obviously, they would have the knowledge. They would also have to probably go through a whole lot to be able to take something on like that. But I'm here for it. Why not? Get people in there who know exactly what's going on and how to score some of these things. That'll, I think, really help out the UFC, but we're nowhere near that at the moment. So
I'd let DC judge so I don't have to listen to him every weekend. No, I think that's an excellent point. But from my perspective, I was looking through it and I was like, It makes sense, and they probably will give Roman the loser of next weekend's fight with Jack Hermanson versus Joe Pyfer. I think that lines up, and then you have obviously the Marvin Vittori, Brendan Allen. There's a ton of alleyways, but if I'm Roman, I take my time to come back to the ring. I pick my next fight very, very, very smartly, and I'm not just taking any fight to get back in there if I'm Roman Dolidze. As for Nasruddin, kind of less the same. I would be ready to go again. Like, I don't think he took too much damage. The second you get a big like ranked fight, that's obviously a higher rank than you. You got to be ready to go and you got to perform. And I think if he did what he did the other night, I think he should be good.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving on to our co-main event, Renato Money Moicano versus Drew Dober. Renato just like for the first few minutes was trying to outbox Drew Dober. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, okay, when's he going to take him down? When's he going to take him down? Finally, he took him down and just established his pure dominance. Did you see at the end of the fight, like his speech when Renato won?
No, I did not.
Renato goes on the mic and just says like anything as an American that you want to hear. He said like after he's done with fighting, he'll enlist and become a SWAT officer. Like he wants to kill all the bad guys. He wants to save America from being a third world country or something. And he was just like, he was just going off. It was awesome. If you haven't heard his post fight interview, you should definitely go back and check that out. But yeah, I thought
some stuff on Twitter though.
Yeah, he
called
was wild.
Out a fellow content creator for the UFC, MMA Guru, which is, I know there was whatever going on previously, and then he posted a tweet of Ian Gary's family, but he photoshopped himself in there. What are we doing? I guess.
And then he takes to Instagram Live and continues making fun of MMA Guru for like the next hour. His whole face is just like swelling up. I'm like, dude, this guy doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Renato Moicano, early entry to the Ring Boys fan club. I don't know. We'll have to take an application here for him. But no, Drew Dober was good on. He got his hands going. He had good, decent ground defense, but in the end, he just couldn't figure it out. He made a really bad mistake where he tried to he rolled out of a Moicano takedown earlier in the fight, and then he tried to do the same, but he kind of slipped, and Renato just landed on top of him, and just after that, he did that in round 3. It was just over, and there was nothing he could do about it.
This is the classic example of people getting really upset when mixed martial arts become mixed, because I saw some stuff.
Yeah.
People weren't happy that Moicano was really taking control on top, but that's what you do to win fights, and that's exactly what he did, and I was not surprised by the outcome of the decision. So
the technicality and the skill to maintain 10-minute control in the UFC is not easy to do. So when someone just does it and they just do it and make it look easy, it's tip of the cap for me. That's all I gotta say. I also had to remind myself, I was like, this is a lightweight fight. They did not look like they're both ripped. Like they did not look their weight. Like Renato asked him before they raised their hands, he was like, what'd you weigh in at? He was like 180. He was like, F you, what?
Yeah. That was pretty funny.
I thought that was a good clip. Nonetheless, Renato Money Moicano announces his YouTube channel, gets the win, just a hot mic, and gets the unanimous decision over Drew Dober. I think you and I called this one, right? I think, Doc was the only one who called Drew Dober. So you and I cashed that one. I'm going to say you started the night 100%, and working back this way, you're 100% moving into the rest of the fight. Until now. Randy Boy. I think we were talking about this fight for a while because it got rescheduled, because was it Randy who was sick, and then he DM'd him on Instagram. They're like, let's get this going. Muslim Salikov was worried because obviously Ramadan's coming up, so he wanted to get this fight in. He was ready to go. I'm glad they got it going, and I'm glad Rude Boy absolutely knocked him out. Earned a performance bonus of a quick 50 Gs. And what do you think went wrong for Muslim Salikov here?
I don't think anything necessarily went wrong. I did stress that Randy Brown's height advantage and reach advantage in something like this is pretty huge. He was 3 inches taller. He had 8 inches on reach, right? At some point, it will catch up with you, and Muslim really couldn't afford to just kind of stand there and strike with him, and that's exactly what he tried to do, and this is where we ended up. Good for Randy Brown. Obviously, it's a big knockout. It was cool to see. It was was a good fight.
Stolikov looked really good and really in shape for 39 years old. And there were shouts on in the MMA community on Twitter. They were like, not sure if Rennie Brown or Leon, and they were like, this is what would happen if Leon fights Islam. And I was like, get out of here. This isn't even close to what would happen. So
yeah, people forget Islam is like 6 foot tall, isn't he? Or
yeah,
he's pretty close.
Tall. He's tall.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think Leon would bully Islam around too much, but maybe we'll see that fight one day. Moving on to the women's flyweight division, Vivian Araujo. Sorry, I knew you were waiting for me to butcher that name. Versus the birthday girl, Natalia Silva, turns 27. Has Mackenzie Dern ringside. Potential dating rumors there. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe they're an item. Maybe they're not an item. I don't know. But she was there supporting. Gets the unanimous decision. And her hand speed is just insane. Like, she was like throwing a ton of shots early, and she was just figuring out her range. But they were so quick. Like, I was impressed. I was like, I knew she was good. She was obviously a heavy favorite at like minus, I don't know, something crazy like minus 290. And it showed. Like, she just out dominated Araujo. The one thing that concerned me was the grappling game is going to need work, but you also have to remind yourself she is 27, 28 just turned. So she has time to work on it. So that's one thing as you climb the ranks, and especially in the women's flyweight division, you can't get bullied around when you have God-given talent like hand speed and leg speed. And she could get up there. She has the speed and power, and that's tough to find just, in a hidden ability.
Yeah, I agree. And I knew, I don't know if I knew, but I did call out that I think the age difference was going to be a big deal. And I think that's part of what her hand speed was. And she was obviously somebody who was doing really well before she came to the UFC anyway. She was a previous champion in a different fighting league. And Viviana Araujo just, obviously she's much better at wrestling, but I don't think she really tried to stick too much to it. And obviously, Silva had really good takedown defense, right? So this is where you end up. And if you have this good of takedown defense and you're that good of a striker, I mean, she's got a solid future in the UFC.
I'm shocked she didn't get a birthday bonus, but come on, Dana.
Come on, Dana.
Break out the checkbook, dog. But nonetheless, Natalia Silva beats Vivian Araujo, and this is a ringer from the Ring Boys, so we can hit that bell real quick while we move on to the next fight. Oh boy. I was upset about this one. I didn't think this was gonna happen at all, but the way the night went, Alyashkab Kriziev versus Mahmoud Muradov gets scratched. Kriziev, I don't know what he was thinking. Like, the first 11 seconds, just like poked him in the eye. Muradov couldn't open his eye for like 3.5 minutes. Herb Dean and the ref and the doc were talking as if they were going to continue the fight. I was like, just call it already. And I was on a call watching the fight with Doc, and I was like, oh, if only we had an eye doctor who could prescribe or know what was going on. So I forget what the exact terminology is, and I'm not going to act like I'm a doctor, but they scratched the protective part of his eye. And so that, like, when that part of your eye gets scratched, it starts to just ruin your vision, and it's really painful to open your eye, from my understanding. What confused Doc and myself was his eye like swelled up like really badly. So we'll have to see if Doc gives us the prescription on the next episode or shoots us a text, and we'll bring it forth and discuss if anything happens again. But yeah, I don't know. I was upset. I thought this was going to be a banger. You hate to see no contest. I think they'll remake this fight, but again, with the Ramadan aspect, I wonder how long it'll take for us to see this fight. So, your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a quick one, and I think part of the reason why it happened is because of the significant height advantage that Mahmoud had. Obviously, Alishkov was feeling out his range, and that's why his hand was forward. So, not that it was completely intentional, but he like really got in there. This was if he got his money worth for an eye poke, basically, is what I'm saying, and just. Yeah, no, I didn't see that it was going to be coming to an end, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It happens in the UFC, and I guess that's part of fighting. And like I said, the height advantage might have been the reason why we got that.
Yeah. Well, You hate to see it. We move on. Khaziev was leaving the ring and he was like, let's go. Next fight there. Give me next fight. And I was like, dude, you just poked him in the eye. Can you just chill for a second?
Yeah.
Nonetheless, that one gets scratched. We won't count that one. Move on to the next one. Gilbert Urbina, Charles Radke. As they were walking out, I checked to see if Urbina had the mullet. And I was like, word, no Semmelsberger action. He's got the mullet. He's got the magic. And he's got his whole body on the mat after Charles Radke knocked him out. I don't know. Radke was just piecing him up. Urbina was not covering like the uppercut. He wasn't focused on defense. I thought he was going to get active early, and he just didn't open up. He couldn't fill the range, and this goes to show you F around, you're going to find out, you know?
Yeah, this was one where when I was making my pick, I was kind of going back and forth. I was just kind of siding with Vegas on this one, and I thought maybe the favorite would have it going, but I didn't take a look at it. But Charles Arty is at a pretty big winning streak coming into this one too, between the CCFC or whatever and the UFC. So maybe I should have taken a bigger look. But yeah, it was definitely, you know, he got that knockout. It wasn't just like piecing him up and then it was crazy. It was a good fight. It was a good first round, but yeah, we'll see what happens from here.
DC approaches him as he comes for this fight interview, and he was like holding the mic close to him. Charles Radke's like, "What, are you scared? You ready? Like, we got to do this interview, dude." Radke, obviously known for not being the most clean on the mic, so I'm glad he kept his act somewhat together. I don't remember if he called anyone out or not, but we'll have to wait and see what's next for both these guys. Moving along to the prelims. There was no Paddy. There was no Rock at the Apex, but there was a lot of meatball, baby. And Molly McCann looked like she was in incredible shape. I was like, from the weigh-in to when she walked in the ring, she was incredibly stoic, didn't smile, was just locked in, ready to go. Diana Belbita was just not ready to go. I think she started off decent, but Molly dictated the pace and got her in a mean armbar after she got submitted by an armbar, kind of just to prove to the fans, like, hey, look at me now, you know. But that was gross. I don't know if she broke her arm or dislocated it. Something came out, something slipped out. I hope Belbita is okay, but Molly McCann silencing the critics and silencing Arty as he got this one wrong.
Yeah, I mean... silencing. Let's get another can from Molly McCann to fight is kind of the script, in my opinion. Belbita didn't look like she belonged in the ring, honestly. Like, we could see it from the beginning. She was striking pretty well, but it was just, I don't think it was at the same level that we've seen some of the other female fighters on this card. It didn't look good. And Molly McCann won. I mean, good for her.
She was throwing a ton of
stepping that losing streak.
She's throwing a ton of spinning like elbows and stuff too. So it was actually like, it was a good 5-minute fight to watch. Like, it was actually entertaining. I'm glad it wasn't just, you know, just a normal strawweight fight, but it worked. She got the win, and Doc and I got that one right. Moving along to my lock of the card and my tears raining down my cheek of the card. Azat Maxim losing to Charles Johnson versus unanimous decision, and Azat he had him in the first round. He was able to get his hands going, which I was surprised. He was able to go right into it, rocked him. Charles Johnson didn't look too phased. I thought he was going to finish him the first round. I thought he was going to, you know, keep and dictate the pace, but he just let Charles get back into it. And man, Charles just started dotting him and rocking him up. And then towards the end, gets him in a choke and just lets go of him. But he looked like he was passing out. I was like, why did Charles just like, you go until the ref stops you? Like, why are you letting the man go? So I think it should have ended earlier. I thought Charles Johnson was going to get the sub. Proved all of us wrong. This one was a ringer from the Ring Boys that failed, just like Gilbert Urbina. And Arty, you mentioned, hey, Charles Johnson's not to be overlooked, and you were right in the end.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a terrible fighter. And I think this might have been one of the more obvious things that like Doc likes to mention is that there is like a gatekeeper in the UFC. And I think Charles Johnson might have that now. And obviously, I think the experience definitely showed. He was doing a good job of defending takedowns, and he just put on a good striking performance, and that's where we ended up. But like you said, Maxim did have him rocked in the first, but just couldn't kind of follow up to it. I almost wonder if there was maybe somewhat of a stamina issue for Maxim because Charles Johnson, for having a 5 year, he's 5 years older than Maxim. He was going through the whole thing. Like there was no stopping. And I think maybe he was fighting to keep the UFC contract and that might have been the motivation, but he just, I think, looked better for the last 2 rounds. So
He also posted on IG after and called out DC and was like, DC just always slandering me on the mic. Shut up now. And then he was like, at Lorisenko, always keeping it real. I was like, oh God, here we go. Yeah, Baby Shopcott, no longer ever calling him that ever again after this performance, ripping that title immediately. I didn't know this, but they were both even on takedowns. Like, I think that's what really did it ultimately for Maxim. He just didn't know when to shoot. He didn't remain patient he just wanted to get the fight to the ground when he was losing the hands battle. And evidently his gas tank ran out at the end. And you got to be more strategic when you need to take a guy to the ground versus when you don't need to take him. And I think he's young, he's new. I think hopefully he'll figure it out, but he's got to go back and watch some Shopcott film in my perspective.
yeah, and I think you just need to be more strategic against guys who have significantly more UFC experience.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because obviously they've been there for that long for not, just any reason. They've been there because they're good fighters, and you need to know what to do and take your time while doing it. Because I don't think standing up and boxing with Charles Johnson was the best idea on his end, but it's what we got.
He's only 28. Like, you can only go up from here, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Honestly, who cares about the perfect record thing too? Like, how often do we get that story, right? I mean, and I think something like that maybe was a good learning experience for him to lose once and maybe get that pressure off of him too, because that could be weighing on him as well. But nonetheless, he's a good prospect for the UFC at the flyweight division.
Agreed. And I also agree that we all got this one right and that this was my fight of the night, just for my perspective of being a fan. Themba Gorimbo knocking out Pete Rodriguez and just hopping on the mic and just saying 2025, he's going to be champ. Leon, Belal, whoever it is, I'm coming for you. And I was like, all right, dude, chill. We love you. I want to see you do great things. That was a sick knockout. And it's already leaked. I think he was on the MMA Hour. He's already confirmed to be fighting in May again. He doesn't know who he's fighting, but I like seeing a guy, get a KO and say, all right, let's go again. I got to ride this. And I think 2024 is going to be a big year for Themba Gorimbo. And this one was a ringer from the Ring Boys.
Yeah, I agree. And it's such a cool story, too. So for something like this to be happening in the UFC, it's very inspiring. And like you said, obviously, he needs to keep riding this, right? For somebody who said he only had $7 in his bank account, this is a really big deal. And I don't know if this was one of the performance of the nights you said, right?
No, it was not. It was not only... Oh, actually, it was. Sorry. Themba Gorimbo and Molly McCann were in performance bonuses, and Azat versus Johnson was fight of the night.
So that'll help out with that $7 bank account, right? Put 50 G's in there. And yeah, I mean, good for him. And like you said, I'm excited to see him keep going because he showed that he is a very skilled striker. So we'll see. Maybe his next fight he shows even more, and we'll see what comes out for him in the welterweight division.
So I lied. It wasn't Themba. It was Randy Brown. I didn't update the sheet. That's my bad. But he deserves the 50 G's nonetheless. From $7.49, can't even get a McDonald's meal to $74K probably now after that night. So happy to see my boy coming up. Moving along. Zhang Yang Li versus Blake Builder. There was talks that Lee has a brother who's also in the UFC. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but I think unanimous decision was well deserved. Good wrestling, decent striking. Blake Builder also had a scar on his stomach. I think Doc and I were talking about it. I wonder if he got stabbed or there's some backstory to that. Couldn't find anything about it, so it's interesting to see. But yeah, I don't know. Blake Builder couldn't get it going, couldn't defend. I'm surprised he had more control time. I think at one point he had a choke in on Lee, and then Lee escaped it, and then Lee just outstruck him, out controlled him. Yeah, he just outperformed him entirely. Thoughts?
Yeah, another ringer for the Ring Boys. I think watching this back, Jong-Un Lee at the end of the first round kind of rocked a Builder with a knee and then some punches. And I think things like that, especially to the end of the round, really carry over into the second round. And then if they carry over to the second round, carry over also to the third. Because this performance was just, he schooled him, in my opinion. Obviously, Builder had some control time, and they both showed some high-level wrestling, but it was not a very close fight.
No. And I don't think we'll see LNML anytime soon fighting again, hopefully. Moving along. Women's flyweight, Luana Carolina versus Yulia Stoliarenko. This one should have been a ringer for the Ring Boys in my eyes. I thought when I saw you put it on the sheet, and I was like, all right, Doc's definitely going to do it. What? He took Yulia? Okay. Interesting. But to see someone go out on an ankle like that, it just... That ankle, I don't want to ever see that video ever again. I hate seeing injuries, especially when it comes to legs. But Luana Carolina outstruck her, outperformed her, as I mentioned. And I will say she's no Jasmine Jazz Devicious, but she did pretty good. And she got the KO TKO at the end of the third round there.
Yeah, and as I said in our pre-show, Stoliarenko is really like a jiu-jitsu specialist. And you can see by the numbers, obviously. So she did have some submission attempts like towards the third round, but Carolina really rocked her, and that's where that ankle injury kind of came in. I don't know if she was injured or more or less just couldn't find her footing. And when things like that happen, I think you need to stop the fight, because when I was watching this back, that like towards the end of the third round, there was no reason for us to see her just get her face beaten for another 30 seconds. Like it was not needed. She was out. They should have just called it.
Yeah, I mean, after the armbar on Molly, it didn't look like the same fighter to me. So we'll see where they both go from here. Landon Quinones, Markel Medeiros, robbery ? Shouts from the MMA community. I don't know what everyone was saying. That when I was watching the fight, obviously Landon's coming from was it the Ultimate Fighter or Contenders? I think it was Ultimate Fighter he was from. He looked good. He looked ready to go. He continued, and he had all the momentum. But Markel, I think, countered him pretty well. I'm surprised he didn't outstrike him, but a lot of people thought Markel lost this fight when they were going to the decision card. But I thought he did enough after I rewatched the fight. Maybe when I watched it the first time, I could agree. But when you go back and watch it, I think Markel Medeiros hits the unanimous decision, hits a ringer for the Ring Boys, and defeats Landon Quinones.
Yeah, I agree, and he's coming. Landon Quinones is coming from Titan FC. Is that who you're asking about, or are you talking about Markel Medeiros?
I thought Quinones was on Ultimate Fighter this past year.
He might have been. I don't see it on their fight history. Markel Medeiros was on Dana White's Contender Series, but nonetheless, both really good fighters. They look really promising for the lightweight division, and I feel like I hope we see more Quinones, because just looking back at his two fights in the UFC, he went against Hawk Parast, who's a very good fighter in the lightweight division, and then this one where it was a really close fight. Definitely need to see more from this guy, and I'm sure we will, just given that they're pretty young and still up and coming in the UFC.
Yeah, Quinones was on the Ultimate Fighter 31. I don't think he got out, but ended up getting the UFC and slithering his way in just to get beat by Markel Medeiros. Opening fight of the night: Tomas the Train Peterson versus Jamal. Is it Puig? I still don't know.
Pogues.
I still mess it up. I don't know why. Yeah, no, we all thought this was going to be a wrestling kind of style fight. I thought it was going to be a fight that would end early and not see the distance. So did Doc. Arty obviously had outside information. I'll hand it off to you, and you called Jamal winning. So congrats on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think just when we see two guys who are pretty proficient in wrestling, you know that they're going to have good stamina. And my follow up to you earlier was we were talking before we started recording is this is a guy who can, if he gets a nutritionist, if he takes some time, maybe loses a little bit of that weight, gets a little bit more lean, he's going to be scary in the heavyweight division because we saw his hand speed is super fast. He's a good striker. And if he continues to work on that wrestling, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Maybe somebody that could be taking over the heavyweight division sooner than later, because that division, in my opinion, is kind of open at the moment. But yeah, nonetheless, a really good fight, a really good opening fight. I don't know about that 27-30 though, but yeah, good fight nonetheless.
Yeah, and emphasis on the nutritionist for me. Like you gotta really get the diet going for me. Like they told me how much he weighed and he walked in the ring. And I was like, we might want to reweigh my boy. But nah, he got it done. I agree. I think I thought Tomas was gonna just have better striking overall, and he got outstruck and couldn't really figure it out. Couldn't get it going. Had good control time. Had one takedown at one point, but just kept shooting and just kept failing. It's like, dude, you're just wasting stamina at this size. One thing DC brought up before we wrap up the episode is that when Jamal is throwing leg kicks, that when you catch a big guy at that size and you hold him with that one leg, their balance is a lot less than when you work your way down the weight class. So it's harder for them to stay up, and you can get a sweep and a takedown. And it's like, that's how Tomas got his first takedown. But it happened so many times more throughout the fight. I'm surprised he didn't try to leg sweep him or try to take that advantage. But the more Jamal got like saw glimpses of him getting his foot caught, he was able to rebalance and refigure it out. So that was kind of cool to see. But nonetheless, nutritionist, no more late night McDonald's runs, and let's start running up the rankings for Jamal.
Yeah, I'm excited for him because he's a good prospect, and I'm sure we'll see more of him. Yeah, good fight, like I said.
And that concludes UFC Vegas 85, UFC Apex 85, whatever. UFC Vegas Apex 86 next weekend. Jack Hermanson versus Joe Pyfer, main event. We'll be covering that one. Doc will not be here for that one as well. So Arty and your boy will be covering it here live for you. Before we sign off, we'll run through the performances of all of our picks. None of us hit a lock of the card. Arty misses Diana Belvita. I miss Azat Maxim. Alyashka Khiziev got scratched, so Docs doesn't count. Card prediction accuracy. Arty and I tied both with 8 out of 12. Doc got 6. So our yearly fight night accuracy is Arty 15 for 23, me 15 for 23, Doc 14 for 23, which brings us to a yearly overall of Arty 19 for 35, me 20 for 35, Doc 17 for 35. So starting off the year ahead, Arty, we're coming back. I like to see this from you, man. Hopefully you keep these picks up and stop making fun of me for not picking favorites.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop that. You
I know.
pick somebody, man. Like, come on.
We picked the same amount of underdogs this card, I think. No, we didn't. Okay, you picked one more.
Doubt that.
You picked one more than me.
Yeah, and I'll continue doing that because
we'll see. I'll check it out.
I like to every once in a while put a pick on somebody I like or somebody who's a veteran in the UFC and who I've seen fight a million times and just would like to see them win. I do it to do it. You guys pick favorites and just hope it rolls. And Doc chooses people like Yulia Stoliarenko for whatever reason. But we're here. We're out here. I'm gonna win this year. I'm just calling it now.
Okay, live. We're directly quoting you on there. Fantasy update. Arty's in the lead with 6. Doc is in second with 4. Myself with 1. I'm excited for fantasy. We have a lot of fights coming up for us, so we'll see those numbers change as we go. And yeah, I think that's all from me. Before we sign off, Arty, you want to say anything?
Yeah, follow us in the social medias. Ask us any questions anything you want us to cover, anything about the UFC, because we're more than happy to maybe throw in an extra 30-minute episode and just talk about maybe some of the news or maybe some of the roster updates. Yeah, and feel free to call us out for anything we called that was completely wrong. Maybe like UFC 297, but whatever.
Still hurts. Still hurts. Feels bad, man. Anywho, thank you, Ringside Nation. We'll see you next weekend. Bye-bye.